Good morning. My name is Wayne Spence, and I am the president of my local 4053, the New York State Public Employees Federation, which is made up of 52,000 members with over 3,000 professional, scientific, and technical titles in New York State government. I am honored to be here today to introduce our president, Randy Weingarten. Randy has been a tremendous help to PEF over the past years, but these last few months have been extraordinary. And it made me especially grateful for her leadership and her friendship. To give you an idea of my background, I'm an immigrant. I came to the US from the island of Jamaica when I was 10 years old. I am a product of the New York City public school system and a proud graduate of the Bronx High School of Science. And I have a degree in electrical engineering, but I work in law enforcement. Like some of the members that I represent, I am a parole officer and proud of it. What pushed me to choose that path was being arrested in 1986 in Davie, Florida, on a traffic citation when I went down on spring break, like so many college students do back then. I was a junior in college at the time, and that event changed my life. I spent 2 nights in jail for a traffic citation. My family had no idea where I was, and in fact, they were given false information as to where I was being held. They had my family looking in one county when I was being held in another county, based on information that the arresting officer had given my family in order to bail me out. And when I finally went in front of the judge, he said he didn't understand the reason for my arrest. He said for a traffic citation, there was no reason for me to be arrested. I could have been given a ticket. But when he realized that what had happened, I'll never forget what he said. Oh, you were arrested in Davie. They don't like black people there. What a shock for me. That experience made me decide to pursue law enforcement to try and make a difference for the better. I never wanted to be on the other end of those handcuffs. That's how much uh, that night, those last few nights made a difference in my life. So you can imagine that the murder of George Floyd and the protest and everything that has happened lately has been intensely emotional for me. On the one hand, I know from experience that most police officers are not like the ones who took part in that act. Most are good and decent men and women who respect the communities that they are sworn to protect and serve. On the other hand, I've personally been on the receiving end of racist policing, and it was frightening and it changed me forever. The difference this time is that we're all finally coming to accept what black people in this country has known forever, which is that a normal, everyday thing like jogging, driving, bird watching, sitting in your apartment, sleeping in your bed can suddenly turn deadly if you happen to be black. So, yes, I took part in the protest in my neighborhood because even as a law enforcement officer, it's clear to me that we are at a crisis point and there needs to be very serious reform of our policing and criminal justice system. There are strong feelings on either issue. You know, believe me, I've gotten some very fiery emails lately from PEF members on both sides. And this brings me back to Randy Weingarten. Randy and the AFT are assisting us in starting these difficult but necessary conversations. Her willingness to walk the walk on racism is inspiring. I'm also, I just can't stop commending the work that AFT has done to end the school to prison pipeline and to stop the criminalization of black youth. This is how we ensure that there will be no more George Floyds. Lastly, I have to say a few words about the last few months. I mean, everything changed in March because they've been filled with so many amazing examples of Randy's courage and stalwart support. Back in early March, I remembered calling her late one night about PEF nurses and law enforcement officers who were tasked with testing people in New York Shell area. The first epicenter of the COVID pandemic in New York State. There was great concern over the lack of PPE. Randy quickly helped us organize several town hall style conferences calls for nurses, other essential workers like mental health and social workers, probation and parole officers, and teachers that PEF represent in a non traditional setting, whether it be mental health facilities, correctional facilities, or facilities with folks who have emotional disabilities. I recall telling her about nurses at Stony Brook Hospital on Long Island and at SUNY Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, who did not even have masks, and how they had been told to use one N95 mask per week. Unacceptable. I told her how some PEF members were working in residential drug treatment centers and were given instruction how to make a mask out of a coffee filter. Unacceptable. When she heard that, Randy went into action. Thanks to her efforts, AFT sourced, purchased, transported, and donated 40,000 surgical masks to PEF for distribution to our frontline workers in the hardest hit areas of New York State, which she personally delivered to us in New York City in April. And I know she did the same for other locals across the country. That kind of dedication to the well being of working people will stay in my heart forever. I am just so grateful to her and her efforts. So, without further ado, it's an honor and a privilege, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the president of AFT and my good friend, Randy Weingarten. Thank you.